Good afternoon. What a great turnout for this beautiful May day. I'm Laura Rose. I'm a group leader with Indivisible Bucks County, and I'd like to welcome you to the Benefits Over Billionaires Town Hall. This is the first real town hall we've had in 7 years because our current congressman will not have an open town hall. So we apologize if we're a little bit rusty at doing the town hall thing. I want to thank my fellow organizers from Indivisible Bucks County, Kirsten Zolfo and Karen Rodriguez, and all our volunteers helping today. Also, please give a wonderful round of applause to Heritage Hall for this venue and the Boilermakers room across the street for the overflow parking. All right, I saw Mr. Longo on his way in, and Mr. Longo was my civics teacher in 10th grade. And he's in VIP seating. And I just want to thank you for teaching me about democracy and the rise of fascism and dictatorships and autocrats. When you're an educator, you never know who you're affecting. You're affecting a future congressperson, a future activist, a future good engaged citizen. So if there are any educators in the audience, can you raise your hands, please? Thank you. Except the math teachers, you can put your hands down. Okay, there's some annoying but very important election law rules we need to follow today. So this is a C4 event, which means we aren't allowed to talk about candidates or future elections, okay? We could get into trouble if we did. So other than that, Khanna, I'm just gonna call him Ro now, is open to asking, to hearing and answering any and all questions. How about that? Any and all questions. I also wanna thank his staff for helping put on this great town hall. One of the things I came away with after speaking with Ro's staff is this is going to be a true town hall. That means he is eager to answer questions on any issue from anyone, regardless of your political party or who you voted for or how uncomfortable your question might be. Because a town hall is crucial to a healthy democracy, and he believes that, which is why we're doing a true town hall. How about that? All right. The representative wants to take as many questions as possible today, so we ask that when you come up to one of the microphones right there and there to ask your questions, that you keep your questions brief and to the point. There are a lot of people here today, so we want to get to as many people as we can. If you have mobility issues, my organizer Karen and I will be walking around with a microphone. Just raise your hand and I will help you. There are ADA compliant bathrooms down here. There are restrooms up there. We're gonna start our town hall in just a moment. We've got State Representative Jim Prokopiak and Senator Sharif Street here today. And first, we're going to hear from Amy Saunders. It's my pleasure to introduce a regional organizer for Red, Wine, and Blue. You may have heard of them. A national group mobilizing women through friend-to-friend organizing to stand up to extremism and protect our communities. With over 700,000 members nationwide and more than 30,000 in Pennsylvania. Please welcome Amy Saunders. Thank you.
As a former civics teacher, I love that. I came to speak to you today from what I assume is a somewhat unfamiliar path for some of you. You see, I grew up in the world of religious fundamentalism and Christian nationalism. In 2024, when I started working with Red, Wine, and Blue, I had the opportunity to speak about the persistence, the slow creep of the religious right movement, culminating in what we are all experiencing now, the implementation of Project 2025. Fast forward to the view today, the loss of our rights, the prioritization of the few at the expense of the many, the loss of functionality in our government that many of us took for granted. Because you see, good government is actually quite boring. Similar to gravity, you don't have to think about its presence, but you surely notice its absence. It is easy to feel discouraged right now. It is understandable to feel that we have no power to stop the chaos happening around us, but we do. And dedicating ourselves to work to fight for others and for our community, that is work worth doing. So I want to tell you 3 ways that our team at Red, Wine, and Blue is choosing to engage in this work: consistency, community, and connection. First, consistency. Red, Wine, and Blue works year-round. Our organizers, both here and around the country, know the communities we serve in, and we aren't tied to any one election. We are here determining what are the needs, who is willing to do the work, and how can we help. When the election is over, we are still here, doing the difficult work of figuring out as a community how to forge a path forward, to keep adapting, and to protect the communities we live in. Second, community. We help women find their people because we know that many hands make manageable work, and the joy found in gathering is in itself an act of resistance. There is a strategy and there is action, but it all starts with women sitting around a table with friends they hadn't met yet. A Red, Wine, and Blue gathering rarely feels like a business meeting and sometimes feels like a party. And the work we do is serious, but the way we feel and what we get to experience while doing that work is something we can choose. And we can choose delight over despair, and so we do. Finally, connection. Traditional political organizing is deeply important. But at Red, Wine, and Blue, we believe that many people who don't believe they can be political just haven't been shown that they already have a path to get there. Empowering women to advocate for issues they care about in the networks they already have created reveals opportunities to engage politically outside of that traditional path of door knocking and phone banking. And we know that personal narrative makes an impact. Knowing your audience means that you can use the power of story. What was once a generic policy is now something that affects you or who you are talking to personally. The connection is already there. You have things in common, even a shared history. There is power in that, and we want to help you harness it. And so consistency, community, and connection is how we are showing up to protect our people, protect our values, and protect our democracy. And we at Red, Wine, and Blue look forward to fighting the good fight alongside all of you. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is a longtime public servant and attorney. He now represents Bucks County's 140th district after years on the Falls Township and Pennsbury School Board. Please welcome Representative Jim Prokopiak.
Good evening, everybody. How are you tonight? Thank you for coming out, and thank you for being involved. We live in unsettling times, and people are worried. I represent the lower Bucks County, 140th district, right down the road. Matter of fact, if you cut out here, make a left, go down to the next light, that's the start of my district. Myself and Tina Davis have always represented working people, and I can't tell you how many people call our offices every single day worried about the future. From seniors who are concerned whether their Social Security is going to be there next week or next year, to people who are on Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act who are worried that they won't have health care to take care of their pre-existing condition, to people who are just worried about that their kids won't be able to live in the same neighborhood that they grew up in. We have plenty of problems in this country and plenty of problems in this state. I represent, part of my district is Levittown and Fairless Hills, areas that were built for the middle class, and where the middle class has had the opportunity to pursue their American dream. And yet, if you talk to people in my district every single day, they think that that dream is farther and farther away from them, and even farther away for their kids. We can't let that happen. We can't let that happen to our future. These are the people we need to build our society. They're our teachers, our firefighters, our police, our electricians, all of those people need a place to live. But the policies we have in place right now, and for the last 40 years, have prevented a lot of those things from benefiting them. Simple fact is, it's harder today to be a middle-class American than has been at any time since World War II. And that's partly because of what happens in DC, and partly because of what's been happening in Harrisburg over the last decade. So we have a lot of work to do, but part of that work is people being involved and being here and listening and advocating for their beliefs. And we need more of that. It's unfortunate that our representatives in DC don't think that's important. But make no mistake, it is the most important thing of our democracy. As we see the tearing away of guardrails here in our country that protect all of us, we have to be heard. We have to let our voices be known that what they're doing, shutting themselves off from the many to benefit the few, is unacceptable. So you being here tonight and being involved and making your voices heard, well, that's, we always hear this, you're a great American, right? Well, you know what is a great American? People who believe in what they believe in and actually advocate for those beliefs. And you're doing that here tonight. So I want to thank you all for coming out on a Sunday. It's a beautiful day. I'm sure you could have done a lot of other things, but you chose to be here tonight. But we have more work to do, because every single day, the fight goes on. Every single day, the issues that you hold dear are at stake. Every single day, we see it right now in DC, working on a plan that could cut billions from Medicaid and Medicare. Billions. And if you don't think that's going to have an effect on you, well, it will. It'll have an effect on everyone. For instance, when we're in Harrisburg in the start of budget negotiations, and there is no way that Pennsylvania can fill the gap if the federal government does what they say they will do to all of the programs that many of us hold dear. There is no way we can fill that gap, and we'll be forced to make very hard choices about things that have catastrophic consequences for working class Americans and working class Pennsylvanians and Bucks Countyans. So we need you more than ever to raise your voices and be heard. That means calling your representatives, whether they be Democrat or Republican. It means advocating for your behalf. It means emailing. It means talking to other people and telling them why you believe what you believe. Only then will we change people's minds and make things better for us. Because for too many times, the Elon Musks of the world, the billionaires of the world, they have access to all of those people. We have to ensure that our voices are just as loud as their voices are. So, enough about me, because I'm talking way too long up here, I think. So, it is my pleasure to introduce a long-term public servant and advocate for working class people here. Even though he is a University of Penn Law School graduate, which is not, it's not Temple, so, but we'll let you go. He's represented the 3rd District in Philadelphia since 2016. He serves as the Democratic chair of the Banking and Insurance Committee and made history as the first Black chair of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. Please welcome Senator Sharif Street.
How you all doing today? How you all doing today? It is good to be here in Bucks County. Listen, I am excited. I feel energized. The first part of standing up for the government we want is showing up. And you all showed up today. And I think that you all really do need to understand that that's such an important part of this process. All over the world, when their oligarchies take over, when democracy dies, I've heard people describe it as sort of like, it's usually like a frog in boiling water. I don't know if any of you ever heard this story. They say if you take a frog and you drop him in boiling water, he pops right out, right? But if you put a frog in water and you slowly raise the temperature, the frog sits there and boils. Part of it is because why does the frog boil? You don't even need a lid, because it doesn't react to the situation. By showing up, by having a reaction to what we know is not normal, it's not right, is an incredibly important action that will help save our democracy. Right now in Washington, there's a debate about how do they find, I certainly don't agree with it, how do you find $1.3 trillion in cuts, primarily so that some billionaires who already have more money than probably 50 generations of their family could spend can get even more money. It's absurd. And the folks doing this claim they have a mandate. Well, they don't have a mandate for this. And one of the things they started with is like, well, let's go after Medicaid and Medicare. And particularly, they said Medicaid and the expansion population. Well, in Pennsylvania, there are 700,000 people that are the Medicaid expansion population. Let's talk about who they are, because they're a lot similar to a lot of your neighbors and friends in Bucks County. Medicaid expansion was designed for people who were working, who had jobs, but the jobs didn't have health care. Because we have an employer-based healthcare system. And by the way, I chaired the Banking and Insurance Committee because only in this country does the tail wag the dog where insurance policy drives healthcare instead of healthcare drives insurance policy. It's crazy. I chaired a committee because I was interested in healthcare, and I said that to leadership, and the leadership said, and I said, I want to be on Health and Human Services. They said, no, you want to be on banking and insurance. I said healthcare. They said, that's where we do healthcare policy. It's the truth. Healthcare policy but it made sense when you think about it, because apparently if you have a procedure, you want to get a procedure, and it's not covered by insurance, most people can't get it. If almost no one can get a procedure, hospitals won't even hire a department to do it. So even if you have the money for private pay, you can't do it. So insurance policy drives healthcare policy. Now back to Medicaid. So we had all these people, and you only get insurance if you had a job, the right kind of job, because before Affordable Care Act, we didn't have a real good public system of health insurance for regular people. And so people who are working they didn't have health insurance, and they're working jobs. So the Medicaid expansion population said, President Obama came along and said, you know what, we need to make sure that regular people who are hardworking folks can have a job. I was in the legislature, President, and the Governor Wolf expanded it. Well, who are those folks? Those folks are a lot of blue-collar workers. There are a lot of people, a lot of low-income workers. There are a lot of people who feel like they're not doing as well as they should have been. Some of those folks that live in Bucks, particularly lower Bucks. And a lot of those are the kind of people that voted for Donald Trump. They voted for him not because they thought he was going to cut their health care to give tax cuts to billionaires. They voted for him because they thought he was going to bring down the price of their groceries. And he hasn't done it. He brought up the price of their groceries, and now he tells them, live with it. He tells them, you know what, so what, you can't buy $35 for your kid. And by the way, somebody should tell them nobody's buying $35 for their kid. Is it 2 or 3? The issue is they're not able to buy any. And if you get rid of health, and if you cut Medicaid for the expansion population, he's going at many of his own voters and saying to working class people, we don't care, but you got to cut a lot of those people to make up for the money that you're going to get, the tax cuts they want to sustain for billionaires. Do you know, I heard a statistic in the last one that 3 people, not 3%, 3 people in the Walton family, when the last tax cuts get saved $31.8 billion a year. 3 human beings. How many regular people's health care is he going to have to cut to give $31 billion to 3 human beings? A handful of people he wants, these billionaires. They're not a whole lot of billionaires, but the ones they have, was a handful of billionaires. He wants to give them hundreds of billions and billions of dollars in cuts so that he can and take away regular people's health care. And so working people who some of whom are working 2 jobs would have to lose health care so they can continue to let billionaires have a health cut. That's what it is. They say we want to pay for these tax cuts that we have to let the super rich have. But then they said, well, it's not just that. Let's talk about who else is on Medicaid. Well, my grandma, before she died, she lived to be 97. It was a blessing for us. And she'd worked her whole life. She owned a home. But eventually, like many people, if you live long enough and you get sick enough, eventually Medicare won't pay anymore. You don't have regular money. Your insurance won't pay, and Medicaid has to pay. Almost everybody who is a long-term occupant of nursing facilities, no matter how much regular folks made in their lifetime, will end up needing Medicaid to pay for long-term health care for seniors. They want to cut that. So we're going to say to people who've worked their whole lives, contributed to this society, paid into the system, we're going to say to them, you know what? You're in the dusk of life. You've worked hard your whole life. You know what? Figure it out. We're not paying anymore because we got to give some billionaires. They need the tax cuts because maybe they can only have enough money for 65 generations of their family. And what about the 75th generation? They want to make sure that they have enough money so that 75 generations of their family don't have to work. And I'm not exaggerating. For most of these people, they have enough money for 50 generations of their family to be okay, economically stable. But instead, they want to take away health care from people who've worked their whole lives and are sitting in nursing homes and say, guess what? Choose between food and health care. You know what? We're not going to be there for you. We're not going to be there for people who've made a promise to and a commitment that we would be there as a government. In the richest country in the world, it's sinful that we're having this conversation. Well, who else does Medicaid population that they want to cut? Because they say, it's an overbloated thing where we get all these people. Well, the disabled, people who were born with intellectual disabilities who have to, and sometimes severe physical disabilities, but a lot of intellectual disability people who will need Medicaid for intellectual health care, for being able to get the support services they need for life. They want to pick on the disabled. That's whose Medicaid population. The very poor. That's who we're looking at for the Medicaid population. Understand, it sounds good. We say, we're going to cut the bloat and the fat out of this really expensive thing. But when you start talking about who those folks are, working people who are working 2 jobs and neither one, maybe they're both considered part-time because you're doing 25 hours at one job and 30 hours at another. You're working 55, 60 hours a week, but neither one is full-time and neither one will give you health care. That's who's on the expansion population. That's the first group they want to go after, and that is the group that more than any other group voted for him. He wants to go after his own voters. Senior citizens who are in nursing homes and need long-term care, who paid into the system their entire lives. These are not deadbeats. My grandma worked her whole life. She started out cleaning houses. She did other things. But she never was unemployed. She didn't stop working until she was in her 70s, but she was privileged enough where they would say, unfortunately, she lived into her 90s and needed long-term health care. They want to go after her. But the other population they want to go after? They want to go after, the other population they want to go after is they want to go after people who were victims of opioid substance abuse. And this might be the worst because they made because the opioids were put in the system by billionaires. They made billions off of it. And now that we have an epidemic that affected people in Bucks, affected people across the country, they want to go after them because substance abuse is treatment is more likely funded by Medicaid than anything else. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are members of Congress that are standing up. Our next speaker is one of them. Understand that Republicans only have a 3-seat lead. Which means if Brian Fitzpatrick were to say he doesn't want to vote for Medicaid expansion, he doesn't want to vote for those cuts, it would happen. Our next speaker is one of those members. Democrats in Congress have been standing up for that, and we need to join there. And so I am pleased to introduce somebody, a man who has consistently said every person should have health care, a man who said he represents billionaires but said that billionaires should be taxed, a man who's been traveling around this country to make it very clear that the power of the people is more powerful than the people in power. I'm pleased to introduce to some and present to others Bucks County's own Congressman Khanna.
Thank you. What a great turnout. It's great to be back home in Bucks County, coming from a Phillies game. Yeah, the only difference is when I was growing up, Southwick knows this, he used to come over. The Phillies, used to go to the vet, and they used to lose. Now they're winning. 1-0. A great game. And it's good to be back in Bucks County, where my political career really started. I remember 4th grade, Rolling Hills, ran for treasurer, lost badly, never had the guts to run for a student council election again. And more seriously, I had an English teacher, I'm so honored, who's here, Gretchen. Gretchen, will you stand? Gretchen, Rob. Stand up, Gretchen. Gretchen taught at Holland Junior High, and 9th grade, she gave everyone in the class an assignment. You got to get published. Now think about that. 9th grade, who's going to publish you? And so most of the people, all in the class, managed to get published. Every year she would do this, and kids would figure out how to get published. And I remember I wrote a letter to the editor, to the Bucks County Courier-Times, and the Bucks County Courier-Times ran the op-ed, and the headline was, "Read this 14-year-old's lips, George," with the first president, George Bush. Now, I was so excited. I thought the president of the United States was going to read my op-ed. Now I write in the New York Times that the president still doesn't read my op-eds. But the point is that Gretchen got me started in realizing that I could have a voice in this country. And she did that for so many people in this country. It's important for me to recognize her because education is so underappreciated right now in our democracy. And there was another person who's here today. I remember him. He'd dress up as Theodore Roosevelt. You remember that? Remember that? He'd come into class dressed up as Theodore Roosevelt and talked about American history and what it meant to be a citizen. Derek Longo, will you stand? I say we would be such a better country if every kid could have American history with Derek Longo. And I didn't know when I was in that class, I didn't know how much I didn't know. I learned about FDR, about the World War I, World War II. I learned about what made American democracy so special. And Derek made it come to life. And he made it come to life to this day. I didn't know his politics. No one in the class knew his politics. He was committed to giving young people a love for American history, for American civic education. Don't we need so much more of that in our country today? Thank you, Derek. You think, I'm not going to go on and on, but there's one other teacher. It's like a reunion. I was in Allentown yesterday, and one of the teachers who couldn't come here, Mr. Dennis, I hadn't talked to him for 30 years. He taught earth science. He brought tasty cakes for me. It's a Philadelphia specialty, tasty cakes. But you know, I was in 11th grade, and it's the first time I actually got to meet a American president, and that is because there was this program called Presidential Classroom. And people from Washington would go to, from Bucks County would get to go to Washington and get to understand what our government was all about. We had a person in Congress back then who was very decent. I mean, I disagreed with him, Jim Greenwood. And he was pro-choice, pro-environment, very decent. And I remember going there, remember getting to see Bill Clinton inaugurated, standing in a crowd, trying to shake his hands, or you're shaking hands with all the folks who were there. Ralph Rhodes, will you stand? Ralph Rhodes was the 11th grade social studies teacher. And year after year, he ran this presidential classroom that took young kids from Bucks County to give them a respect for our politics, for what our democracy could be. Back then they used to, I still remember, this congressman would come in to speak and we all had to give him a standing ovation. Now people run away from members of Congress. Different time. But Ralph gave me an understanding and appreciation for what Washington can be, the nobility of what it should be, of why public service really matters. And we used to have debates in political science, and we used to respect each other's viewpoints, conservative and liberal, and have dialogue, not tweet out, not do TikTok videos, actually listen, have conversation. That's what this democracy, the democratic spirit, when I talk about that, it started for me here in Bucks County, at Council Rock High School, at Rolling Hills, at Holland Junior High. And I have, of course, my family here. I'm so proud of my parents and my brother, Vikas Khanna and Vijay Khanna, Jyotsna Khanna. Will you please stand? I'll tell you something. See, when my parents came here, and it's interesting when I meet people because now they're like, oh, you grew up in Bucks County. I said, how do you know that? And people have Googled me all over before they meet. So it's all there. And so some of you may already know the story, but my grandfather spent years in jail as part of Gandhi's independence movement in the 1930s and 1940s, fighting for freedom, speaking out, writing back then in India letters to the editor against British rule and going to prison for that. That movement inspired Dr. King. It inspired John Lewis to have the civil rights movement in America, which led to the Voting Rights Act, which led to the Civil Rights Act, which led to the Immigration Reform Act. The Immigration Reform Act of 1965 allows people from all parts of the world to come to immigrate to the United States. And my parents came, my father, a chemical engineer, my mom, a teacher's assistant for special needs, went to Ben Salem Elementary and then to move to Council Rock. I was born in Philadelphia in 1976, our bicentenary. And the spirit at the time that animated my parents to come here, it was right after John F. Kennedy was president. This was the place to be. We were the envy of the world. We were brimming with activity. Kennedy said we were going to go to the moon. Kennedy said America would be the beacon of the light to the world. That's the America I want to see again. An America that dreams big, an America that does big things, an America that inspires people around the world to believe in its potential. See, I believe in America because Bucks County believed in me. I believe in it because even as a son of immigrants, I had so many people who were there for me. Teachers who I've recognized, Little League coaches, even though I couldn't hit. You know, only a younger brother can tell you that. I mean, he was much better as an athlete. But they still put me, they said, Khanna plays. He may hit ninth, but he plays. And I had people who said, you can do anything in the world, anything in the world. If you work hard, if you have a passion, I still believe in that vision of America. I was in Allentown. There were some Trump supporters there that were protesting. I started to talk to them. They said, "We see you on Fox News. Can we take a few pictures?" I said, "Sure." I called them in. 3 of them sat in the town hall. I said, America needs to build new industry again and new manufacturing and technology again. We need to take the robotics and industry from my hometown now in Silicon Valley and combine it with the industrial capacity and work ethic of places in Pennsylvania to build the modern steel plants, to build the modern aluminum plants, to build modern biotechnology, to reindustrialize this country in places that have been hollowed out. And they clapped. And I said, America needs to work together to take on the big pharma industries that have billions of dollars of lobbying in Congress, so that all of us are paying more for our drugs than people in every other country in the world. We need to work together to make sure that Americans don't pay a higher price than people in other parts of the world. Trump actually introduced it, and I introduced it as bipartisan legislation to make sure that we get that done and lower drug prices. And these folks clapped. We can have an agenda that brings this country together. People are exhausted. They're embarrassed. They're embarrassed and exhausted of what's happening in America. I believe there is a much better way. I believe there is a much better way, an aspiration of what this country can be in economic vibrancy, in reprioritizing the middle class and working class, and making sure everyone has the chances I did. I didn't have to worry to go to a doctor. I didn't have to face cuts in public school. I had to take out too many loans for higher education, but I had that opportunity. Why can't this country give every kid the chance it gave me and my family? Why can't we make sure that we have universal health care and every American kid has health care from the day they're born? Why can't we make sure that at a time where you have two-parent families struggling to work, that we have affordable child care at $10 a day, and pay child care workers $20 an hour? Why can't we make sure that we have a livable wage for people who do hard work? And why can't we make sure that we have a new economic renaissance in this country, a Marshall Plan not for Europe but for America, where we go to places like Johnstown and Allentown and Farrell, Lorain and Warren, Ohio, and we start to rebuild the economies. I've seen the economy in Silicon Valley, $14 trillion, Apple, Google, NVIDIA, Tesla. But we can't have all the wealth concentrated in a few places. We can't have all the wealth concentrated in Silicon Valley and New York. We need to bring new technology jobs for young kids everywhere. We need AI academies everywhere. We need to understand that not everyone needs to go to college. Some people, yes, go to college, and that's fabulous, and make that affordable. But we also need skilled trades and an investment in the skilled trades so that we can have a vibrant economy. And we need a White House Economic Development Council that focuses on the economic development of every part of this country. You know, my disagreement with Trump and Vance, fundamentally, David Brooks had a great column. He said, Donald Trump asks all the right questions. He just has all the wrong answers. And the questions they ask are serious ones. Why did we let 90,000 factories leave in this country? Why did we let steel get hollowed out? Why did we get aluminum hollowed out? Why did we watch our industrial base just erode? Why? Why? The corporate greed.
Made a lot of money going somewhere else. It's that simple.
It is that simple.
Follow the money.
I appreciate that. And it was a lot of corporate greed. But the question is, how are we going to get it back? And I'll tell you something. Trump, 19th century high tariffs, 19th century blanket tariffs, and 19th century James Polk, let's go conquer Greenland, is not going to put jobs in Farrell, Pennsylvania, or Johnstown, Pennsylvania. We need, as a Democratic Party, to say we have the actual answers for how we're going to build a modern economy in every part of America. I call that an economic patriotism message. that we have the answer of what new manufacturing is going to require federal investment and a commitment that if you make it here, we'll buy it. We have the answer of what new technology jobs are going to be created and how to do it. We have the answer how we're going to invest in the new workforce in these places. We have a future-oriented economic vision. And instead of these tax breaks that are going on for people who don't need them, come to my district, you'll see they don't need them. They really don't need them. I don't get it. I don't understand how people are for these huge tax breaks for people who are making a lot of money on AI and technology. Instead of that, those tax breaks, how about we not cut people's basic lifeline on Social Security, on Medicare, on Medicaid, that we expand the social safety net in this country so that every person has the opportunity to succeed. That is why I'm here. I'm here to try to have a positive message for our country, to try to figure out some common ground of how we move forward, and to then answer all of your questions. Before we open it up to your questions, I do want to recognize our incredible speakers. I don't know if there are one other digression, because it's a bit of a homecoming. I saw Judge Wade. Judge Wade, would you stand up, please? Judge Wade. First African-American elected in Bucks County. But the reason I recognize him is I was over his house. He had a son called Hollis. Hollis was my classmate at Council Rock. And we used to do science projects. You can tell who was better at science given the profession I chose. Hollis was really good, and he used to figure things out, tinker with them. And it's just wonderful that he's doing well. And Judge Wade, great to see you, and thank you for being here. Thank you to our incredible earlier speakers, Kirsten and Laura from Indivisible. They were fantastic. And Indivisible, thank you for the leadership you're showing around this county, around this country. Rep. Prokopiak, thank you for your leadership. I know you're a strong and important voice in the state. Amy Saunders with Red, White, and Blue, thank you for your leadership and all that you have been doing. And of course, Senator Street, the chair of our Democratic Party. Senator, thank you. One of the best chairs in the country, an incredible leader, incredible friend. I'm looking forward to his future. I don't know if it'll be Congress or Senate. I don't know if this is the time anyone wants to go there, but wherever he wants to come, he is going to be a great, great asset, and I'm proud of it. So with that, I really want to spend the bulk of the time taking your questions, your answers, your insights, and to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing who wants to ask questions, and feel free to ask anything you want.
Can you guys hear? Oh, you can hear me. Okay. So Donald Trump is making white supremacy the norm. And I think we just all need to call that out. So it's not really a question. It's just we need to start calling it what it is. We don't call them Trump supporters. We should call them white supremacists. That's all. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your passion, and certainly we have to make sure we stand up for the Constitution. And some of the people in this country, like Abrego, who, regardless of what you think of him, you can't deport people without due process. That is not an allegiance to Abrego, it's an allegiance to the Constitution. But I'll tell you something, I talk to a lot of Trump supporters. There's some in this room. And what we need in this country is to understand how we start to talk to each other with a respect, not to come in with saying that 50% of the country, we can't write that right off, 50% of the country. We have to figure out, how do we listen to people, how do we find some common ground, and how do we have an agenda that's going to unify this country? My fear for America is our internal division. And I'll tell you something, look, whether he likes it or not, whether he realizes it or not, Trump is not running in 2028. And there is going to be a new generation in this country. New generation on the Republican side, a new generation on the Democratic side. And we can either replicate the mistakes of the previous generation and continue a downward spiral of more anger and more division, or the new generation in this country can say we're going to take a different task, a different path, and we're going to work to try to heal the divides, and we're going to try to work to listen to each other, and we're going to work to try to bring a common vision for this country so that this country can lead again like it led in the country under Kennedy, which my parents came to. That is my hope and aspiration. It's not that I won't call out racism or sexism or xenophobia when I see that, but when I approach people who are fellow citizens, I think we have to approach them with open hearts and open minds to try to find our common citizenship as Americans.
So I have a question concerning the tax discussion. We keep talking about taxes, yet there are many billionaires who do not pay taxes. They take out loans against their stock options, against their companies, and it's a form of wealth that is not taxable. If you're a billionaire, you're hiding the money. Trump claimed he paid $750 in taxes. That shouldn't be allowed. I'd like your thoughts on that, wealth versus tax.
You're absolutely right. Look, I said I represent Silicon Valley. Our district is worth $14 trillion. And there are more billionaires in and around my district than any other place in the world. Now, here's what I don't understand. I say this everywhere I go in the country. If the guy who represents the area that has all these billionaires is saying tax the billionaires more, how is this a hard vote for the 434 other members of Congress? I really don't get it. I don't get it. I've been going, they keep sending me back for 9 years, and I'm saying raise the taxes. We should have a 2% tax on billionaires, at least. But what you're saying is exactly what they do. Here's what they do. They have $1 billion, $2 billion. Then they borrow against that to finance their lifestyle. So they're never paying tax because they're never getting a W-2. They're just borrowing the money. Then when they die, they get a step up in basis of the capital appreciation, and they avoid a lot of the tax. That is just not fair. We can afford, I am for wealth generation. I am for more technology companies coming. I'm telling you, if you tax the billionaires a bit more, it's not going to stop more billionaires from inventing new companies. We can tax them more so we can fund healthcare and education in this country and make sure everyone has a fair chance.
Congressman, as a veteran, just like you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. What branch were you in?
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was an Army medic, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. God bless. So, as a veteran, I took an oath to protect our democracy the same as you. I appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for protecting and continuing to fight for us. I want to know what your concerns are for the veteran population. I'm with a group called the Doylestown Action League. It's a political action group, and we're putting together a rally for veterans for D-Day on June 6th in Doylestown. And I'm part of my job in this group is to mobilize veterans, and it's such a small demographic of veterans that think the way that we do. So I want to know what you feel like is the biggest threats to veterans right now in our country with the cuts that are being made that I could maybe use as points to mobilize. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming out, for your service, for your continued activism. See, I have a pretty simple view. I think if you're a veteran, if you put on the uniform, if you went to Iraq, if you go to Afghanistan, when you come home, we should make sure that you have a good paying job. We should make sure that you have health care. We should make sure that you have the ability to buy a home and to support a family. People don't realize when they talk about these DOGE cuts that 1/3 almost of federal workers are veterans. 1/3 are veterans. I said to Elon, I've known Elon for many years because he comes from my part of the world. I said to him, are you really telling me that someone who wore the nation's uniform, who went to battle, that you're going to ask them to fill out efficiency forms and their performance for giving tours at public parks? Come on. I mean, he's firing veterans who are doing important tasks of public service. I believe that that is unconscionable, what is happening to veterans. We need to make sure that veterans have good-paying jobs and that we reinstate some of the good-paying, good, hard-working veterans who have been fired. We also need to make sure that we're not firing some of the generals. I mean, 7 generals have been fired. I mean, do you understand? You know, I was talking to one of them. I don't want to mention their name. I mean, it's 30, 35 years of service to the country. And they don't even get a call, fired, out of the military service. What is that going to do for morale? What is that going to do for our military? We need to make sure that we honor people who wear the uniform, who dedicate their life to public service. And we need to make sure, of course, veterans get the mental health services that they need. The ability to get counseling and treatment for PTSD and all of the other challenges that they face. So I appreciate your speaking out. I appreciate your service. And I'll tell you something, there are a lot of Republicans and Democrats in the Congress who care about veterans are going to stand up to what is happening right now with the DOGE cuts.
You asked him a question, what was his answer? He said you asked Musk a question.
Well, Musk is gone. He's a gone case. I mean, Musk. It's I mean, look. I mean, he's followed and unfollowed me on X 3 times. It's like a bad ex or something. Look. I just think it's sad. It's sad. You know, Musk could have come into government and he could have been an FDR $1 a year person. Does anyone know the $1 a year story with FDR? You know, FDR had business leaders come in. Back then it was more gendered, so there were largely men. And they came in and they built things. They built the industries. They built America. You know, Western Pennsylvania produced more steel than Japan and Germany combined to win World War II. How am I doing, Mr. Longo? Pretty good? Pretty good. All right. You know, I said that was what business leaders did. Musk comes in, he wants to dismantle government. He wants to, why not have him build things, make things, instead of dismantling government? And I think there's no sense, you know, there used to be a sense, even in Silicon Valley, a sense of service, a sense of patriotism, that money was important, but it wasn't the highest end, that the highest end was the contribution you made to the nation. And I've said, it's time for Silicon Valley to be in the service of America, not America to be in the service of Silicon Valley. We need people to understand that there is a higher purpose to our country, to our values, than just making a buck. And Musk doesn't get that. Maybe he will once he's been humbled. You know, 65% approval rating is down to 35%. Because you can't take, and he's being pushed out of the government. But I'll tell you the mistake he made, and a lot of people make that. Look, we people in Pennsylvania rooted for Elon Musk when he was sending rockets up and putting satellites in space. You know, and we'll root for Bryce Harper when he's hitting home runs. And we'll listen to the music of Beyonce. But let me tell you something. We don't want people who may be good at something making decisions for our government. You know who gets to make decisions? The American citizens, the American people. And Musk never understood that. Musk never understood that. And so those DOGE cuts have been awful. They have done such damage to the country. The NIH, 7 of the directors out of 18 have been fired. 31% cut in cancer research. By the way, I do want to just take a moment. Very sad news today about President Biden's diagnosis with prostate cancer. And if I can indulge, if we could just have a brief moment of silence for our prayers and good wishes for his recovery and for his family. Thank you. You know, but everyone here knows someone who's been touched with cancer. And thank you for your resilience. Thank you for your resilience. But, I mean, who cuts cancer research? Who cuts cancer research? Cuts in Alzheimer's research, cuts in Parkinson's research, cuts across the board in the things that America were gifts from America to the world, to humanity. So I'm not underestimating the damage they're doing, But we need, by having turnouts like this, people are speaking up, and this is what's so important about this budget bill. We need our Republicans to join Democrats in opposing further cuts to these agencies. Whoever is next, go ahead.
Lisa DeVicaris, Ben Salem. I think we can all agree this is not normal. I think everywhere, all of our representatives, wherever you go, you have to consistently say, this is not normal. Everything that's happened is not normal. We're dealing with 30 years of propaganda. I mean, I think that's really where the Democratic Party is. 30 years of the Republican propaganda that's just been fed to people. I'm tired of everybody saying, oh, the Democrats have no message. We have a message. I think it's clear. We care about other people. And I think as Democrats, I feel like you, as representatives, you need to say, oh, we have a message, and this is what the message is. And the propaganda that they kind of put out there, and then somehow we adopt also, just seems, it just makes no sense to me. So here's some instances. So they constantly say, we are the tax and spend party. Oh, they're the tax and spend party. We're not the tax and spend party. We're the tax and services party. We believe in taxing and then giving services. So could we adopt that? Like if we keep saying it, no, we're not. We're the tax and services party. We give you services. That's what government does. It's not a for-profit business. We give you services. That's a simple message, a simple thing that anybody can understand. Oh, services. They give us services. My other piece is the entitlement, entitlement program. How is it that Democrats have allowed them to say entitlement programs? They're not entitlement programs. Can we get another name for it? Can we say like citizens loan? Like we're loaning you that money. We put that money in for Social Security, we put it in, we loaned it to you as the government with the understanding you're going to give it back to us. It's not an entitlement. So I don't understand why they keep saying entitlement, and we don't ever, contradict that. My other thing is, so they came up with that big waste, fraud, and abuse, Did we, argue with that? No, we immediately said, yeah, nobody agrees with waste, fraud, and abuse. Of course we don't want waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah, of course we have to look at that. How about we go like this? We don't believe there's waste, fraud, and abuse. We believe that what's happened is that when we have big government that is using their money correctly, there isn't waste, fraud, and abuse. If things aren't working out well, it's probably because we've cut the number of people that are working for the federal government.
I really appreciate your voice and your messaging. We need you to run for office or go out on the campaign still. But let me just...
Can we just tax the rich?
Yeah.
Can you just make that's your slogan, federally and state-wise? Tax the rich, and we'll be able to give you services.
I absolutely agree. I mean, that's why I said we should be taxing the rich, and the rich are the billionaires. They're not your lawyer or doctor. I mean, they're people who are making obscene amounts of wealth that we can tax, and it is to provide services. And by the way, you're right that Social Security has the least fraud. It's less than 1%. And Medicare has the least fraud, much less fraud than you have in Medicare Advantage and in private insurance. So we need to talk about how some of the basic services that government provides are necessary for citizenship. And Social Security, of course, is earned. It's not an entitlement, it's earned. People work hard, they pay into Social Security, and that's what they earn based on their hard work. So thank you for pointing that out.
Maybe it's my age, but I'm concerned about artificial intelligence. I think it can either be a great help to humanity, or it could be a harm, or it can be both. And I was very concerned to hear that President Trump, in his recent trip to the Middle East, has decided to make multi-million-dollar deals with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, I think transferring some of this technology to them and helping them develop to be a hub when this technology was developed here in the United States. And I would think Make America First would be about maybe having us be the hub and also protecting democracy. Those countries are not democracies. They surveil their citizens. And it doesn't seem like this administration, in thinking about artificial intelligence, has thought, how do we ensure that artificial intelligence also aligns with democracy and human rights? And in fact, this administration, it doesn't seem to matter. It's just where can it help myself personally, Donald Trump, and my family. And I'm very concerned about it. I thought, being where you're from, you might have some thoughts on it.
Well, I think you're very, very thoughtful. I was on this morning on This Week with ABC, and I made exactly your point. I said, what happened to America First? Why aren't we putting the biggest research and technology AI hub in a place like Western Pennsylvania that wants those data centers? Why aren't we putting it in Ohio? Why are we putting it in Dubai and in the UAE? We should be having those high-paying new technology jobs in these states, in our states. And the second thing is, we need to make sure that our young folks have an understanding about technology and AI. The old cliche is AI won't take your job, but someone who knows AI will. And we need to make sure our young people across this country have that opportunity. What is the president doing in terms of education and making sure we have AI and technology academies across the country? What is the president doing in terms of making sure that it's safe and that we have certain regulations, just like we have on nuclear energy? You know, the Republican bill has a provision, I'm kidding you not, that would provide a 10-year ban on any state adopting any regulation on AI. I mean, it is, look it up. This is one of the reasons it should be opposed. How can you not have regulations that protect privacy, that protect safety? And then we need to make sure that AI isn't taking people's jobs, that it's not that people are making the decisions around how they use machines, not machines making the decisions about people. And this means that, yes, you may have driverless trucks, but you still have a truck driver to keep it safe or to do work around it. When I fly, these days it's a disaster flying, by the way, on the tarmac, 3 hours to go to Boston, the flight was canceled coming back. But when I fly, I want to make sure that there's a pilot there. How many people here would feel comfortable flying without a pilot? I mean, you know, and that is the common sense regulations that we need. And I understand technology well enough in being in Silicon Valley to take on the excesses of technology and to hold technology accountable. We need to make sure we have the adoption of technology, but it has to be under American values, under our constitutional values, not values, as you pointed out, that are oppressive or authoritarian or are going to take away individual dignity.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bonnie Eldredge from Langhorne, Pennsylvania. Here on behalf of my husband, actually, he's a veteran, 28 years in the Navy.
Well, thank you. Thank you to you, and thank you to him.
He also now he's 80 years old, he's 15 years older than I, and he has frontotemporal dementia. He wakes up in the middle of the night and sometimes says to me, why are they trying to kill us? Because he does have his mind well enough to see what's going on. And one night he said, we need to leave the country. This was a few months ago. He's seeing the news. He's seeing what's happening. Did I get my Social Security yet? When are you going to get my veterans benefits? I'm trying to do everything myself. I run an eye care practice. And hearing him breaks my heart. So I'm concerned about our veterans. I'm concerned about my husband. I'm concerned about people with mental health issues like dementia who are going to not get the care that they need. I have patients also that were in cancer research that have lost their jobs since January because the funding was pulled. Also, you know, about speaking English and learning English. What about everyone? What about all the funding that's being taken out of the schools? They don't want them to teach English. They don't want them to teach history. They don't want them to teach, they only want them to teach Christian nationalist, whatever. I don't know. I'm Jewish, so whatever. My husband's Catholic. Whatever. I didn't have to be pushed into that when I was in school. I mean, I said that I had a moment of silence. I did the prayer. I do what they do. When in Rome, you do. When I go into a church, I kneel, I pray. You know, I feel for everyone, like everyone's God is who their God is. So I'm asking you, and I know you don't know the answer to this. This is just craziness. He's not following the Constitution. He's taking away everybody's benefits and money, and even the health insurances are taking away our money for the things that we do for our patients. Doctors care about people. They're taking away what we need to provide to the people. And it doesn't matter where they came from, what language they speak, whether they're disabled or whether they're scientists. Everybody matters, and that's just how I feel, and I'm very upset about all of it myself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you do for other people, and I appreciate the strength you're showing. I'm sure it's not easy having a husband who served our country and now dealing with dementia, and I know how hard it is, not just for the person who is suffering, but for the caregiver. And I really appreciate what you're doing, and you're sharing that story. That means a lot. And it puts into context that these things aren't just politics. These are real people's lives that are being affected. And we can do something about it. It's not that we are helpless. It's not that it's just Donald Trump. We have a bill that we're considering in the Congress. That bill will have $715 billion of cuts in Medicaid. It's the largest cut in Medicaid in the program's history since Lyndon Johnson created it. And that is going to hurt the services in mental health for people like your husband. Whether you are on Medicare, Medicaid, it doesn't matter. The point is that those services, the money isn't going to be there for the hospitals, and they're going to have to cut services. And there's no need to do this for the country when we're producing more wealth than we've ever produced in human history in districts like mine. So the choice is pretty simple. You can either raise taxes on people in districts like mine who have done very, very well. By the way, if you raise taxes to 1997 levels, which was a high-growth period under Bill Clinton, you would raise $5 trillion of revenue. You could either raise the taxes or you can cut these social programs that so many Americans rely on. It is just cruel to cut these programs. And the reality is they're also increasing defense by $150 billion at the same time that they're taking these programs away. I don't know what about you, but instead of having 56% of our budget go to defense and only 2-3% go to education, I think if we want to outcompete China, I'd rather have more money in teaching our kids about American history and science and technology and educating a new generation. But the reason I say we're not helpless is this vote's coming up, and we only need a few Republicans to have the courage to say no. No, we're not going to go along with what Donald Trump wants. Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri, has said no. We need more people to follow that lead. And your old speaking up makes a difference. Did you want to follow up? Yes.
Thing too that's really important to me. I'm seeing them taking people, taken.
Yeah.
I'm seeing them taking people, like college students, just people dressed in suits, taking them and deporting them, and people without any due justice. This breaks my heart with family that died in the Holocaust and things like that, what happened in Germany, what happened in your country. I feel like that's what's happening here now, and it's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
It's just absolutely scary. And one of my friends' restaurant they went to on Aramingo Avenue, so.
It's heartbreaking, and I'll say this. Look, one of the things I remember growing up in this community, being Indian American, being of Hindu faith, is I almost never felt that I didn't belong, that I couldn't do anything I wanted to do in this country. And that's the values. That's why I have such faith in this country, such faith in the American people. And they're chipping away at that. Every time that they make a statement that someone, because they aren't a citizen, doesn't have basic due process, they're chipping away at the Constitution. They're chipping away at exactly what makes America exceptional. So we need to speak up for our values because those are the American values. Well,
Hi. I want to ask, are we safe? Is my family safe?
tell me a little bit more about yourself. What's your name? Where are you in school?
My name is Sophia. I go to the Pennsbury School District. My grandma is on Medicare because she has diabetes and asthma. My mom is a single mom, and she had me without a husband, and I had a donor, and I have tons of half-siblings who have lesbian moms, and I'm scared for all of them. I have a half-sibling who's in Israel.
And Sophie, what grade are you in?
I'm in 6th grade.
Well, you have so much courage. You give me so much hope. And you ask, are we safe? And you're mature enough and you're thoughtful enough that I'm going to give you an honest answer. And the honest answer is that there are people right now in power who are making it harder for folks who are lesbian in this country. There are people who are making it harder for folks who are on Medicaid and who need those services to live well and to have basic health care. And that's true about what's going on. But we also have a country where a 6th grader gets to stand up and talk about that. And talk about that in a way that is so much more powerful than anything I can say or any congressperson can say. And I do believe that if enough people like you and others start to talk out and speak out about it, that people in this country are going to rise up and stand up against the cruelty and prevent it and make sure that you and your family are safe. That is ultimately what we need. We owe your generation. So I think you're the most courageous person in this room today, and I'm so proud of you, and I appreciate your speaking up. I'm going to tell you, if you ever want to run for office, you got an early head start. I still don't get standing ovations.
Yeah, for my school, we were writing letters to the congressmen and the senators of Pennsylvania. I wrote on the topic of Medicare. So many of my other friends wrote for different things. One of my gay friends, Aiden, he wanted to write about, being gay, but he didn't think it was safe. So he started talking about, instead of how hard it is with money. His mom is mid-divorce, and she doesn't have a house. She can't even buy an apartment. It's scary what America has come to.
It is scary, and I appreciate your sharing that. I mean, the one thing I know in this county, you're going to have a lot of people, from what I know and remember and believe, who are going to stand up for every family, every person's ability to be safe and live a dignified life, whether they're gay or straight. That is a value that I believe Bucks County has. And people, even if at the national level, if they're demonizing people who are gay or who are lesbian or have a different sexual orientation, that's not this county. And I think you will find people who will stand up for the right values here. But I also think you're right. People are struggling economically. It's hard out there. It's hard out there because of the costs of health care. It's hard out there if you're a single mom and you need child care and you need to be able to make sure that you can pay the rent or pay utilities. And that's why we need in this country an agenda that prioritizes the working and middle class, that raises wages, that provides everyone with health care, that provides people with child care. And you speaking out and writing letters is going to help build that future. Ultimately, your generation is going to have a chance. And I appreciate, yeah, there you go, send it to the paper. But I appreciate what you're doing, and you know, we'll, with your permission, because you're young, if you want this to be on our social media, you may find out that the whole country starts to listen to you. So thank you for speaking out.
Hi. When you meet with your Republican congresspeople, are you finding that any of them are about ready to start doing the right thing and to speak up for their people? Or are they kind of a lost cause? Are they afraid? Are they, I know that many of us have met with Congressman Fitzpatrick's staff, and his staff tell us that he will never support cuts to Medicare or Medicaid. But yeah, we don't believe him. So are you seeing, are you starting to see a shift at all in your Republican counterparts?
Well, so this is my 7th town hall that I've done. I used to do a town hall I still do every month in my own district. And then I went to Bakersfield and some of rural California, and you know, 1,000 people showed up. And so I said, okay, there's a hunger for people to be doing these town halls across the country. People want to be heard. And one of the town halls I did in Bakersfield, Valdeo, was the congressperson had voted for the Medicaid cuts. We had 1,000 people show up. A month later, after the town hall, he says he's no longer for the Medicaid cuts. But Khanna had nothing to do with it. I said, I don't need credit, but these town halls are working. And so that's an example of someone who changed. There are other Republicans like Don Bacon, who is a general who serves on the Armed Services Committee, who has spoken out and outraged by some of Hegset's signal chat talks about warplanes and the firing of generals. But you asked specifically about the Medicaid cuts. Here's the reality. The bill they have, so there's no confusion, has $715 billion of Medicaid cuts. That's the reality. Now, it's the largest cut of Medicaid. And, you know, politics it's kind of like baseball. There's a score, yes or no. One, you know, you either hit a home run or you don't. There's no spin to this. You're going to have a yes or no vote on this bill. And we'll know very soon if people are actually going to stand up against Medicaid cuts. Anyone who votes for this bill is voting for $715 billion of Medicaid cuts. And so this is the issue. And the Republicans couldn't get the budget passed in Friday. But that wasn't because they didn't want the cuts. That's because they've got some people who want even deeper cuts, who want to cut even more. But I think we have to be very clear, and this is to the woman earlier on who talked about messaging. I think we all have to be very, very clear and not let people get away with obfuscation. If you vote for this bill, you're voting to cut Medicaid. And we all need to be saying that loudly to every representative in the Congress. Thank you.
Wow, okay, so after hearing everyone else speak, there's a gazillion things I could say. But I did write a little pre-thing, like, in the car on the way here, and I think it's an important question to ask, so I'm going to ask that. So the SAVE Act, as you know, will disenfranchise an estimated 60 million people, mostly married women who are citizens, from voting. Republicans openly rejected a proposed amendment to the bill that would, and I quote, give assurances that married women who change their last name after being married will not be shut out of the ballot box. So their aim is clear. How can we most ensure that Senate Democrats will filibuster and/or the party will act to prevent the SAVE Act when it reaches them to vote on, in order to protect the integrity of our elections and make sure that 60 million women are not disenfranchised for being able to vote in the next election solely for the act of getting married?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. It is one of the most regressive bills in modern history. I mean, you explained it well, but basically what it would require is if someone got married and changed their last name, they would have to re-register. They would be taken off the voter registration. Then they'd have to go get their birth certificate changed to their married name. Then they'd have to go take that birth certificate in person to get it notarized and have proof that they actually were the new name and can vote. And the estimate is that this is going to disenfranchise so many millions of women. You know, and you know, it's not coincidental because women are voting for the Democratic Party. I mean, this is not rocket science that, you know, that they're doing this. But look, I don't know. There were some Republicans, you'll have to check which ones who voted against this. They were so horrified by it. I'm confident there are going to be some Republicans in the Senate who vote against it, and I'm very confident it's not going to become law. But it should be an indication for people to check the voting record of where people voted.
I'm pretty sure 2 representatives who were Republican voted against it of the hundreds in the House of Representatives. And I don't trust any of the Senate Republicans to do it. So can we trust the Senate Democrats to filibuster as much as they can in order to prevent the bill from being passed before an election cycle?
The Senate will not get 60 votes on moving forward with the debate on this. And no Democratic senator is going to support cloture of the debate to move this forward.
So we can trust that they will filibuster for the bill?
We can.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for everyone for staying after. I know it's past 7. The current administration is unabashedly dismantling our democracy, ignoring Supreme Court rulings, and celebrating overt corruption. And they are, in my opinion, barely meeting any real resistance to save it. I understand that the current administration's actions are unprecedented, but why isn't there unprecedented amount of rallying among Democrats and your colleagues? Why are we begging sycophants like Brian Fitzpatrick to vote against a moralist bill instead of taking real action at getting at the root of the problem and getting the actual corruption out of our federal government?
Why? Well, I agree with you, and which is why I'm on the road trying to be outside Washington doing these town halls. But we need more people. Well, Cory Booker was, you know, filibustering for 25 hours.
What else?
We need people. Bernie Sanders is out there doing rallies across the country. What we need is mobilization in this country, a citizen-inspired movement like we've never seen before. There is a study done by a Harvard professor who said that if 3.5% of a population rise up, mobilize, speak out, then that prevents a move towards authoritarianism. 3.5% here is about 10 million people. And we're at about 5 million who are organizing. We need more. But I think that the Democrats in Congress, you know, that we cannot be capitulating to what Trump did. First of all, the people who voted, in my view, for Laken Riley, which was basically saying that you can deport people without due process, that's buying in to the rhetoric that Donald Trump now is using to deport people without due process. Schumer, by capitulating and not getting a single concession, is creating a situation where Trump is actually empowered to push forward. The only check on him has been the bond market. I mean, that's been and the courts to some extent. But we need to have a Democratic Party that is going to stand up, that is going to fight, that's going to be out organizing and speak out.
I agree that we need that. We definitely need that. There aren't enough people out, but the rule of law just seems to be disintegrating. And the cabinet is, I don't have to say, everybody here knows. So when do we know that we've hit bottom? Because I thought once Roe v. Wade was overturned, that was the bottom. And it's just continued to sink and sink on all levels, from public health to finance, military, you name it. What would strike you as a thing that this is the turning point? What will it be?
I believe the real constitutional crisis will be if Donald Trump does what J.D. Vance is telling him to do, which is blatantly defy the United States Supreme Court. So he's come close, but so far the Supreme Court if the Supreme Court rules in a way that he blatantly defies, then we have a major constitutional crisis. But this is why we need to speak out about the Abrego case and making sure that they actually follow what the court is saying. This is why we need to make sure that we are standing up for basic rule of law in this country. I went to Yale Law School, where both J.D. Vance and I had gone to school, and I gave a major speech in defense of the courts. And I said that this is the essence of what Lincoln believed in constitutional democracy. Look, I am for deporting someone if they are convicted of a violent crime. But someone convicted of a violent crime does not belong in the United States. I just want to know if they committed the violent crime. That is basic due process in this country. And we have to stand up for the rule of law. We have to stand up for the courts. And that is something that all of us need to continue to do. And the good news is that it is working in terms of there's far more scrutiny on what they're doing in these communities. Not enough, but we got to keep speaking out.
Hi, Representative. Thank you for coming and doing Mr. Fitzpatrick's job. But my question is a really dark one. What happens, what remedies, if any, if this passes, do we have?
If the bill passes?
Yeah.
Well, look, I think it's going to be a devastating consequence for people who are on Medicaid. The independent congressional office estimates that almost 8 million people will lose their insurance. It's going to mean hospitals closing. It's going to mean services, mental health services, physical therapy services taken away. It's going to mean huge cuts, further cuts in cancer research and Alzheimer's research and Parkinson's research. And it's going to mean further tax breaks for the billionaires. So what do we need to do? Well, if it passes, a lot of people are going to be hurt. A lot of people often ask me, is Donald Trump going to end democracy? I say I have enough faith in the democratic spirit and the American people that we will triumph over Donald Trump. But what he can do is hurt a lot of people in the process. And he's doing a lot of damage. He's doing damage to our institutions, and he's doing damage to ordinary people. So you say, what will happen? People will get hurt.
Anything that the Democrats can do other than, I guess, wait 2 years?
There really isn't, ma'am. I mean, that's why I'm waging this fight now, to get Republicans to speak up and stop this. Because once it passes, and they can pass it on a party line vote, and they have the House and they have the Senate, and they only need 51 senators and they need 218 House members, and Donald Trump will sign it. And this part of the bill, this bill has a lot of terrible things, but the bill doesn't have a lot of unconstitutional things. I mean, they can cut these programs. I mean, if that's what the American people want, tax breaks for the wealthy and cuts to Medicaid, that's the democratic process. But I think they're going to have a rude wake-up call, because I don't think that's what people who voted for Donald Trump were expecting. They were expecting the grocery prices to go down. They were expecting inflation to go down. You know, I mean, that was why they voted for him. They were expecting him to secure the border, not start deporting people without due process. So, you know, he is disappointing. He will, if he passes this, as Josh Hawley pointed out, his Republican senator, he's really going to upset and hurt a lot of people who voted for him.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm a little short here. Hi, so I'm a millennial. I keep hearing a lot of Democrats talking about how strong the economy was and blah, 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 blah. I'm a millennial. Many people in my generation were screwed from the get. I've been struggling. I didn't move out of my house until I was 30 because of my student loan debts. And I know that is a thing that the economy was stronger under Biden. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry, not for people like me. The GPD doesn't matter to people like me. That's the first thing. The second thing is I do work in a health insurance company. I'm not going to say which one. But what I can tell you is that they made over $300 billion last year in revenue. by denying your claims. And also, I think we need to stop pussyfooting this language. What these cuts are going to mean is that people are going to die. They are going to die. Also, with the deportations, quote unquote, that's not a deportation, that is kidnapping. And it is kidnapping and holding people hostage, not only people who are in this country illegally, but legally, from sovereign citizen nations. This is a problem on a national scale. Not a national scale, sorry, a world scale. We need to stop using weak language, because this is not, what's going on now is, this is Nazi crap. It really is. And I understand that you do want to work with these people, and there are people there who I'm sure you can work with, but the administration is really pulling eugenics. With Robert F. Kennedy and his nonsense, him wanting to put people on mental health medicines at a wellness camp, and the people getting shipped to other countries, this is beyond. And I know there's not a lot you can do as a single senator, but I think strengthening the language is Democrats actually saying what it is instead of saying people are going to get hurt. No, people are going to die. So we need to get the reality of the situation here. And to that lovely young girl, I was also raised by a single mother. My mom was a widow, so you're amazing, by the way. Anyway, so
Thank you.
thanks.
Well, look, I agree with you. People are going to die. I mean, there are people at a town halls who said it will be a death sentence. I mean, especially people who are seniors who go to a senior center, a nursing facility. They run out of their own savings, and then Medicare, as you know, doesn't cover long-term care. So you go on Medicaid, and if Medicaids are cut, that's often a death sentence for that senior. So I don't shy away from that language, nor should we. And you're right, in some cases, we've had disappearances and kidnappings where you've had green card holders on a university campus being taken away who have been legal because Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance didn't like what they said. I mean, it's a blatant violation of the First Amendment. But your broader point is so right about how the economy, how many people like you are struggling. You know, I had to take out a lot of student loans. I know the burden of student loans. We've got to make, in my view, public college free in this country, or vocational education free, like we had a free high school movement. And we need to make sure we have child care for folks. We need to make sure that we build more affordable housing. We need to make sure we increase the living wage, because if you increase the living wage, that will increase wages across the board. And we certainly need Medicare for all, so that we don't have more people denying health care claims than we have doctors. 1.4 million people who deny health care claims, only 1 million doctors. And by the way, I have a bill that says that anything that Medicare would cover, private insurance should cover. It is absurd that private insurance, I mean, they deny my claims. I'm a member of Congress. I don't understand. You know, it really causes so much stress for people at a time that they're the most vulnerable. So thank you for speaking up.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you very much for having this town hall. Much appreciated. I'm just going to read this statement. I'm a federal hydrologist with 4 decades of experience, currently placed on administrative leave and unable to continue doing the research on regional water resources. This research provides direct benefits to the American public, many of them directly related to public health. Example, PFAS in water, other things.
And where do you work, sir?
I'm currently on administrative leave, but I worked in the New Jersey district of this agency. It's the U.S. Geological Survey.
Got it.
And so I've always felt it's been an honor and a privilege to do this work. If I could do it all over again, I'd probably do the exact same thing. And I know this is how most of my federal colleagues feel about their scientific work in public service. I'm very concerned about the future of federalized, unbiased scientific research in the agencies that do this work in service to the American people. And I don't really have a question. It's probably impossible for you to answer this, but how can we ensure that before these agencies become gutted to the point where we cannot really continue to do this research in any meaningful manner? I guess that's my question.
Well, thank you for speaking up. Your experience, unfortunately, is common across the agencies. I mean, they're gutting the EPA, they're gutting and hollowing out the State Department, they're gutting the FDA, which can't approve new medicines, they're gutting the NIH, as I spoke to earlier about health research. I mean, they are gutting these institutions that it took Americans 50, 100 years to build. And they're taking a sledgehammer and gutting it because they have no appreciation for service, for public service. They don't understand that there are people who just want to help the country and serve the country, and so they view these things as just bureaucracies. They don't see people like you. They don't see the incredible value that you're adding to the United States, and that the government has been the driver in so many places of economic growth. I mean, it was the driver of understanding research of the internet, of the GPS, of robotics, of AI. All of that came out of government scientists, government research, and they're gutting all that. Most of the new medicines come out of government research. So what can we do? We need more people to understand, to simple language, to understand that they really have declared a war on science in the government, and that we have to be standing up for people like you and speaking out, and not just Democrats doing so. We need some Republicans who are going to find a spine and say that they're destroying things that there used to be bipartisan consensus in this country over. So I appreciate your speaking out, and the more people that do speak out and let people know we can't wait till 2026 or certainly 2028. They are gutting those agencies every day, and there won't be agencies left within 2 years in any form recognizable if we aren't aggressive in speaking out and doing everything we can. The only thing we can do in the minority is to put pressure to get certain Republicans to speak or to take the fights in the courts and try to have the courts strike down their unconstitutional actions.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Denise Eisenschmidt. I'm a nurse. I work for a nonprofit Medicaid, Medicare company that's going to be really affected with these changes that are going to happen. And I just think you need to do anything you can, and whether it's making these guys feel guilty. And I don't understand why, I see Trump advertising all the time now, which I don't understand because he's not even running. But why aren't we advertising in red states or areas where there's a lot of Medicaid people and letting them know what is going to happen?
Have you seen any advertising here? Or
No.
People? No.
No.
Yeah.
No. I just think we need to do a better job of informing people. We're not doing that. And if we don't do that, we're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
And the other thing, since we're talking about insurance, I think that it's time to go back to nonprofit insurance companies. Because even working at a nonprofit, we still deny a lot of claims. So.
Well, I totally agree, but who doesn't deny as many claims as Medicare? And that's why we need, in my view, Medicare for everyone. You can keep your supplemental insurance. If there's supplemental insurance you want, private insurance you want, you can keep it, but have Medicare. But you're absolutely right. Look, I have been saying to our party, to our DNC, that we need to be advertising in the 30 to 35 red districts, even if we don't have a candidate, to point out what's going on with the Medicaid cuts, with the cuts to gutting of public education, with the gutting of science, so that people know what's going on and who's voting for what. And I became so frustrated, I said, okay, I'm going to go on the road and do these town halls myself. And that's why I started to go into these districts. We're trying to go into the 20 to 30 districts. But as a member of Congress, there's only so much my voice will carry. We need the entire national party to be focused on 30 red districts and to be organizing, phone banking, town halls, advertising, to let people know what's going on. Because the only reason this thing is going to go through is if people don't have the facts. I don't believe that the vast majority of Americans, including Trump supporters, believe that to give tax breaks to Silicon Valley billionaires, we should be cutting Medicaid and Medicare or Social Security.
I have another thing. I just feel like with the Democratic Party, it's like progressive or moderate. I think you need to really rebrand yourself, like common sense solutions instead of that, because I just was at a Warrington Democrat meeting, and when I said that we need to be more progressive, I'm not kidding. They all came after me because there's just progressive, the older people think that it's not good. The younger people think it is good. And I think instead of branding yourself, you need to rebrand yourself that it's solutions for the average person.
I am a believer that we need a future-oriented, solution-oriented approach. But progressive to me simply means that you believe in some basic common sense things, that you're for a living wage, that you're for people having health care, that you're for people having education. Here's what I think. I believe that the Republicans, they don't run away from saying that they're conservative, but they have a strength of conviction to say that when they're conservative, that is going to help people in this country. And I believe, after we had the robber baron era, where people were railroad barons, were depriving Americans of a safe work week, they had child labor. We didn't have a 40-hour work week. We had a progressive era. After Herbert Hoover destroyed this country's economy, we had FDR and a progressive era. After George W. Bush took us into a war we should never have been in, we had Barack Obama and progressive policies with the expansion of health care. And after Donald Trump, we will have, in my view, a new common sense progressive era in this country that prioritizes working and middle-class families, in getting them health care, in a living wage, in making sure they have education and child care. That is common sense. What they're doing is not common sense. What they're doing requires a propaganda to convince Americans that somehow tax breaks are going to help them.
I'm just saying that to get people on board, because we have to win.
We do.
We need to do whatever it takes to rebrand ourselves so that people don't say, oh, they're progressive, I'm not voting.
And certainly we need all parts of the Democratic Party unified and not be fighting with each other while we have a bigger fight to have.
Thank you for coming.
And by the way, you won't offend me if you want to leave. I know we're well past time, but I'll stay till the last question because, unlike in my district where people get to ask questions all the time, it's a kind of a novelty in these Republican districts, so I appreciate it.
Congressman Khanna, I just want to say I'm very proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Also, I just want everyone in this room to know that who Senator Street is. Senator Street? Senator Street, I work with people that Senator Street represents, and he is a pillar in that community. So when you're talking about a sixth grader that is being raised by a single mom, I was raised by a single mom as well. She's going to be a super person. But what I want to say is that there's 150,000 single moms in Philadelphia, 30 minutes down the road. So the one thing I hope out of all of this is that you guys reach out to Senator Street and ask him one simple question: what do you need? So please do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm an independent. I voted for Fitzpatrick, okay? I'm here today because Satwick, and I know Roe, Mr.
Roe is fine.
I came here today because I couldn't sleep last night. When I used to work at World Trade Center 4, and I used to walk through that building, and I used to grab food and head to that building, and then we all know what happened. Our president went to Saudi Arabia, which is whatever. I'm cool with Saudi Arabia. I've got friends that I work with in Saudi Arabia. They're transactional. I'm aware of Iran being transactional. But what we did in Syria, that man is Al-Qaeda. The president of Syria is Al-Qaeda. You don't change your spots when you're Al-Qaeda. You don't change your spots when you're Hamas. And the fact that our president did not talk to Israel before he negotiated sanctions to remove sanctions on Syria, to me, is mind-boggling. And what's terrible, Mr. Khanna, Congressman Khanna,
We're always fun, yeah.
Senator Shaheen said that's good, what he did. I don't care about, I want a proper leadership in the Democratic Party. If you guys need anything to fight on, say we do not support Al-Qaeda. That's what you say. Tell the Democrats, no, we don't support removing sanctions from Syria until Israel says it's okay. Until Israel agrees that it's okay. We do not go visit the Middle East unless we meet our Democratic partner. They are our partners, whether we like Bibi or not. He's not really all together. We know that. And we want to make sure, we want to teach Israel, have mercy, Rakamim, on the Palestinians. But the fact that we are not going to get what we want from Hamas, we are not going to get what we want from Al-Qaeda. So please, sir, that is all that I really give a crap about right now. That's the only thing that's been keeping me up because it hurts me. And my wife is right there. She was, Rana, can you please wave your hand? We were on a boat right after 9/11 serving these firemen, serving these police officers. And let me tell you, a lot of them are dead right now. Okay? A lot of them are dead. And no, to the veteran back there, sir, if you want to know one thing to fight about, tell them this. We don't support Al-Qaeda. Sorry, bro. Sorry, bro. I apologize for
No, I appreciate your passion. Look, the situation obviously in the Middle East is incredibly complex, but one of the challenges, and you know, Assad was a horribly brutal dictator who oppressed his own people and gassed his own people, and the toppling of Assad, in my view, was a welcome change. That said, we need to make sure that the new government in Syria is going to commit to human rights and recognizing the security of Israel. And the problem with Trump is it's transactional. There is no diplomacy. There's no statesmanship. There's no understanding of the complexity. And that is not going to work in a region as complicated as the Middle East. So there are complex factors, as you know, in Syria. We need to make sure that we are working with a new government to verify that they're going to uphold security commitments and human rights commitments in consultation with our allies. And he didn't do that.
And pound him on that.
Absolutely.
My name is Clyde Wade, and
Judge Wade, good to see you again.
Well, it's nice to see you again as well. I'm going to be brief. It's on branding. I think that the Democrats need to observe and learn a bit from the Republicans, because they are on branding, on discipline of message. They are they're off the charts. How could the Democratic Party allow their opponents to rename them to the Democrat Party, which grates my ears every time I hear it? And the Democrats have all the right issues, but they need people as spokespersons like yourself, who's effective in communicating, who has a common sense approach that people can understand, no charts, no multi-syllabic words that people don't understand, something that shows the people that you're there to fight for them. Is there any conversation taking place amongst the party that recognizes this issue and has some kind of solution for it?
Yes. No, I appreciate that. I think there is an understanding that we lost the last campaign because we did not have a clear, simple message. You know, this was brought home to me when I was talking to an IBEW friend of mine up in Boston. And I said, are the guys going to be voting for Trump still, or are they going to vote for Joe Biden? This was when Biden was still in the race. He said, no, 70% are still going to be voting for Trump. And I said, but what about infrastructure? He's like, well, that's exactly why they're going to vote for Trump. I said, we just got infrastructure done. He said, yeah, but Biden never talks about it. Trump talks about it every week. And they think he really cares about infrastructure. So part of the problem is communication. You have to be, in this day and age, out there every day, talking about what you're doing for people, and how much you care about what you're doing. And Trump does a flurry of action. He says, okay, I'm going to sign this executive order to lower prescription drug prices. People think he's lowering prescription drug prices. They don't realize that you can't do it through executive order. You need Congress. We need to be a party of action, a party of communication, a party that is every day saying, here's what we're doing to improve your life and win again on the economy. If we win on the economy, on helping people in their pocketbooks, that's, I think, what's going to help bring the trust of the American people. So I agree with you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for going long. Thank you for everybody else for sticking around. I'll make it very brief. Barring any shenanigans, it's going to be a blue landslide next year.
Well, we can't take it for granted. We got to work hard. We got to work hard.
I'm calling it now. But that being the case, is there any thoughts or work being done for balancing out the powers among the three branches of government, not having this unitary executive theory, like reversing it, putting structural safeguards in place for future Project 20 whatever? Anything like that? Thank you.
You know, we didn't do enough when we had President Biden in the House and Senate. We did a few things. One of the things we did is the Electoral Count Act, so a future vice president can't do what Donald Trump wanted Mike Pence to do, to overturn an election. That becomes much harder because we got that through. But, you know, Donald Trump has thought of 100 other ways to defy things that the Congress is going to need to check. And the next time we get power with the Democrats in charge, we need to work to restrict the president's ability to do deals like with a Qatari luxury jet. We need to make sure that the president can't have business interests in conflict, or have people in government with business interests while making decisions. So there is a whole host of things we need to codify. On tariff power, I'm on a legislation. That's a Congress power. That is not for the president to be unilaterally imposing tariffs, declaring it a national emergency. I mean, that was a national emergency as if there was a war, not the way the president's using it to declare a blanket tariffs. We're certainly not at war with every country, and yet he's using that power which belongs to Congress. So Congress needs to reassert itself, and that needs to be part of our project when we get back to power.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Yu Ping. I was a student when the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. And, I was not in Beijing, but I was leading the student movement in another city. And now I explain to my friend in China why I resist Trump, because I don't want my kids face tank on the street. And my friend actually in China has more confidence in American army. They said American soldiers swear the loyalty to Constitution instead of president. But I heard the news, now they replace a lot of lawyers in the army, in the military, who interpret the Constitution. So, do you have confidence that won't happen in this country?
Well, I appreciate that. And I got a note from the owner saying we need to wrap up soon. So maybe everyone who's in line can stay in line, and we'll take those questions. And I'll try to be brief, but maybe we just want to have more new people join the line so that we can respect the owner who's been generous with the time. You know, I am very concerned about the firing of generals, the putting in of lackeys at places like the FBI, the Justice Department. But I am served on a senior level in the Armed Services Committee, and I meet a lot of generals and senior military service officers. I'll tell you something, they have to get a lot of generals fired before they're going to take the democratic spirit and DNA away from the officer corps. We have a lot of people in the military who are doing extraordinary work, and a lot of generals who would give their lives before they violated the Constitution. So do I believe that Donald Trump's trying to do everything possible to make those agencies loyal to him? I do. Do I think he's going to succeed? I don't, because I believe that there are enough people of honor and integrity at the highest ranks of our military.
Thank you so much for coming out. My question, and a number of people have mentioned the messaging question in terms of the Democratic Party, and we've rattled off really the same messages. I don't understand why. I mean, you've been amazing to come here, and your messaging is spot on. Why can't the other members of the House of Representatives, 5 things, just 5 things in their pocket that is a central message, Democratic Party, that they can just carry with them, go to their local TV, go, like you mentioned, what just happened in the Middle East. You know, why aren't we, Trump has an entire social media, this entire mechanism. Why, I don't understand why we're not, I know it has to come, it's being pushed to us, and we're all doing as much as we can, but we also have the representatives that we've elected who, just 5 things they can mention over and over and over again. That's my question. Why is that not possible?
I appreciate it. I think we need to get that in place sooner rather than later, and certainly for the midterms. But you're right. I mean, it's pretty simple. We're not for giving tax breaks to billionaires. We're for taxing the billionaires so that we don't have cuts in Medicaid, so that we don't gut public education, so that we don't gut medical research. And we're for making sure everyone has a living wage, has health care, has child care, has a decent education. That, in essence, is the Democratic message headed into the midterms. And my view is that Hakeem Jeffries will get us on the same page with that. And a longer-term message, I believe, is we should be the party of economic patriotism, the party that says we see where the country is going, the future is going, and we want every community, Bucks County, Johnstown, Allentown, every community to participate in that future, every kid and family to participate in that future. We don't want to go backwards the way Trump is taking us. We have to be the party of the future, but in the party of economic success. I do think that the party is going to get there, but sooner would be better. And I'm confident Hakeem Jeffries will lay out a platform that we can all run on in that way.
I'm not as confident about the midterms, just because I don't think, we still see people that don't understand what's happening and don't realize how bad it is. So,
but thank you. I agree with you. We need a coordinated, simple message. I appreciate that.
Hi.
Hi.
With this regime that's now in place, this feels to me like the culmination of decades of work that the Republican Party has done to destabilize the public's trust in mainstream news sources that I still continue to trust, like NPR and stuff like that. So the question that I want to get at is, I have a lot of people in my life who I consider good people. I love these people, but they support him. They voted for him. And when I go to have discussions with them, we present these alternative facts to each other. They call my information baloney because it's from NPR. I think their information is baloney because it's from Newsmax. I want your advice on, you talk to people all the time. How do you reach people? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have different information that we're getting. I know that my information is accurate and theirs is wrong. They think that theirs is right.
Well, I think I hear you, and we have a disagreement in this country over certain facts. That's the problem. It used to be we all listened to Tom Brokaw when I was growing up, or Peter Jennings, or Dan Rather, and there was a sense of of common facts, that we may have different opinions, but those were the facts. Now, it wasn't all positive. We got into the Vietnam War. There was a lot that sometimes the common facts were wrong. But by and large, the country had common facts. Now we don't have those common facts. But there are only two things I can say. One is we have to be patient, be willing to engage, listen, and engage in conversation, not come in with a judgmental view that we're right, we have all the truth, but try to listen and be persuasive and engage in that conversation. A lot of times when you engage, you find some common ground and you at least respect people in terms of where they're coming from. And the second thing I'd say, and then I'll let you have a word, is reality is reality. And at some point, right now it's still hypothetical, but at some point people will go and they're going to either not have enough dolls on the shelves, or they're going to have prices that go up, or they're going to be out of a job. And that is something that no matter how good of a politician you are, you can't spin. It's early right now, but people ultimately will vote based on what they actually feel.
To focus it down to what's happening, you're here right now to spread the word that this bill is going to cut $750 billion
715, yep.
in Medicaid.
Yes.
They don't think that that's true, that that's happening.
Yeah.
And when they realize that it is true, it will have already passed. So if we're trying to get this 3.5% of the population with us, and I'm worried that we won't be able to until it's too late, I guess.
Well, you're absolutely right. They may pass this thing, and unfortunately, people then will face the consequences, and they'll be hurt. But what we can do by showing up places like this, by putting things on social media, by engaging in that conversation, by putting the facts out, is try our best to convince our fellow citizens not to vote for this. And it's working in some places, but it's a democracy, but ultimately, people will face the reality. They can't escape the reality, but we have to do all we can to get the facts as we see them out, and the $715 billion cut is a fact. They can argue that it's waste or fraud, and they can make that kind of argument. We can argue why it's not, but the numbers are the numbers. They're cutting $715 billion from Medicaid.
That message,
Yeah.
they don't know that. Some of them don't care, yes.
Yes, sir.
I'll be short. This has been a long day. At which point will the incredible volume of criminal activity currently going on in the United States government be punished? I've been waiting 8 years. I haven't seen a damn thing happen. When will he face consequences for his crimes?
Well, Merrick Garland, there were 4 trials, and he was going to face consequences if he didn't win. And the challenge is that now he has, of course, a pardon power, and he has the Attorney General in his corner. But the one caution, and I've said this to people some of whom who've gone into government. I said, in this country, rarely do we put presidents in jail. I don't think we ever have. But we certainly put everyone around them in jail. So just because the president may not go to jail, you, if you work for the president, could go to jail. And I think that is something that people around him need to consider as they think about carrying out unconstitutional activities or corrupt activities.
I think just this once we should possibly consider putting the lifelong criminal who has skated past every consequence in his entire existence and has been a criminal of impossible breadth since the 1980s. Maybe just once he should face a consequence.
Well, I agree on the consequences.
Oh, wait, no, I'm done.
Thank you, sir, for your Vietnam veteran. Thank you.
I'm a guy. But I got cancer from the Agent Orange. I was stationed in Thailand around the base. They sprayed it to get rid of the foliage, but they did a hell of a job on Vietnam getting rid of the foliage, and a lot of the Vietnam veterans are dying now from that. What I want to explain, that I did get a chance, because I'm getting money from the government because of this. I found out how the VA works, and it works terrific. It's great. In fact, it works better than any for-profit hospital in this country.
That's great. Good to hear.
If we can go, use the VA, okay, as a way of having all hospitals work that way, we'd be in really great shape because everyone's taken care of. He wants to cut the VA bills. He wants to fire a lot of people. He wants to cut a lot of the clinics, okay? Now, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of Vietnam veterans up there in the third and fourth, whatever floors are, that have been up there, okay, ever since they were 18 years old. Wounded, they never leave, okay? What's going to happen to them? And this is the truth. Some of those kids, and they were still kids, they don't see anything. After their parents are gone, no one visits them. And the only people that care for them are the people that work for the VA. And they are great people. And you're going to cut those benefits of those people. You're going to take the VA away from the veterans that really need this. And this administration is horrible. It's cruel. And what are we going to do with those people after you cut their benefits and they don't have it anymore?
Well, thank you for your service again, sir, for speaking out. I mean, look, the VA works. The VA is the basic, and it's our obligation to take care of people who serve this country. That's why we have the VA. That is the obligation that we've had in this country since the Civil War, since Lincoln said that we needed to take care of our veterans and people who wore in the uniform. And what they're doing, as you pointed out, is firing people in the VA. They're hurting the care in the VA. They want to privatize parts of the VA, and that is betraying our veterans. So,
to get people to love this country when they don't love you back. How do you do that?
how do we get
How do you get people to join the military? How do you get people to love this country if you don't love them back?
Well, I think, sir, I appreciate that, and you obviously love the country for having worn our uniform. But I don't think that loving the country...
I joined the Veterans for Peace, and I joined the Vietnam Vets Against the War because that war was wrong.
But I think...
And that's what I was proud of. But we got to take care of our veterans that are hurt, that are dying now, you know what I mean? And our country isn't loving us too much.
I appreciate that, and I understand the hurt and the anger, but I think that the love that people have can't be for the person in our office or the president now. The love is for the American people. The love is for our Constitution. The love is for our country's history. And that's, I think, what will inspire people to make a change in the government. Thank you.
Oh my God. Okay. I did not prepare this like the last one, but when the little girl who had an amazing speech, when she spoke, she was talking about her gay friend and her cousins who had like lesbian moms or something like that. And so I remember in the debate, I'm going to make it super quick. I remember in the debate, Trump said to Kamala, in one of the presidential debates, he said that they are cutting children's penises off in school, okay? So that's not happening, and most people know that's not happening. But her response was not to say, that's not happening. Her response was to be like, well, I think everyone deserves to be their authentic selves. Trans people don't want that happening. Trans people aren't pedophiles. Why? And another thing, I remember Ketanji Brown, when she was asked, what is a woman? She didn't answer the question because she wouldn't, actually Google what that, like, even me, like, obviously she know what a woman is from a biological standpoint, but, like, there are reasons. Trans people are not just crazy people who decide, you know what, I'm the other gender and I'm stupid. There is a 70 years of sociological history. There are two different definitions of woman. It's in the dictionary. And she didn't know that. And my question is that if the people at the top of the Democratic Party who are supposed to stand up for trans people and queer people in general can't do the basic research to look up these definitions, to say, when Republicans say that trans people are like transing kids, that, hey, actually, that's already illegal. Why aren't they saying that? And how can we, as a public, influence the Democrats' messaging? How can we reach the Democrats and say, hey, because we don't have a cohesive message about queer people. Republicans could literally say that trans people are going into schools and they're cutting children's heads off, and the Democrats would be like, well, I feel like everyone deserves to live their authentic lives. There are some things that they are claiming that are happening that aren't as insane as cutting people's penises off in school, but are still really weird that aren't happening. Like, for example, it's already illegal for trans people who are minors to get certain surgeries, and they're saying that that's happening. Why aren't the Democrats, when presented with that question, saying, actually, that's already illegal? Why are they engaging with these? And how the people who are supposed to protect us are allowing the LGBT community to be battered publicly and not doing any research to defend them. And so it fuels stuff like the bullying that her friend was experiencing, bullying that people I know are experiencing. And this is, okay, yeah, I said all that. But how can we reach these people? How can we reach the Democratic politicians to say, hey, your messaging isn't working, it's not cohesive enough. How can we educate Democrats? Because I met with a politician, I'm part of the local Bucks M Club, and I said, hey, I'm LGBT, could I go and talk to just like a bunch of people who just don't know, they're not bad people, they just have been propagandized, And they said it was too dangerous. So if I can't do it, if the LGBT people can't do it, and the Democrats can't do it, but they can't do it. So how can we reach them? How can we influence their messaging?
Look, I think you're starting to do that here, and I'll give you an example with the women's rights movement and the movement for abortion rights. It used to be the Republicans would say absurd things, that the Democrats believed that that doctors can kill babies after they're born, and then we pushed back very strongly and said there is no one in this country, a Democrat who believes that you can kill some baby after they're born. And similarly, there are probably facts that are totally erroneous in terms of cutting off reproductive parts for people who are trans, and that just isn't happening, and we need to say that. But these issues, I'll just be honest, these are issues that, like they are new to many Americans, they're new to many people in politics. I mean, people in politics, if you haven't noticed, aren't exactly in their 20s and 30s. I mean, I'm one of they call me young, and I'm 48. And so it's going to take people like you to help in a non-judgmental way, to help educate and inform people about these issues so that we're armed with the facts.
And
I'll give you the last word, and then we got to
I try to do that in my personal life, but I'm saying, and this goes for everything else. My dad, wherever he is, was talking about messaging earlier in regards to like 5 things or whatever. A bunch of people have talked about messaging. How can we, the people, reach the Democrats? How can we say, hey, these are our grievances, and how can we get listened to? Because
you're getting listened to right now,
But how can we reach the people at the top? How can we reach anybody in the Democratic Party to get our cohesive messaging through?
Well, I think you show up to organizations, forums like this, talk to people who listen, and I'm happy to certainly take your message to our leadership, and I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for coming.